All right, just before we take a look at the dailies, of course, a reminder of our panel this morning on State of the Nation. Joshua Nyamori, advocate of the High Court, will be in studio alongside former Senator Gloria Orwoba and Wilson Sosion, who served in the National Assembly. We start off with the People Daily, and the story is the same: fireworks at a funeral. Political undertones were heavy as President Ruto and former Deputy President Gachagua shared a podium for the first time. Yes, remember yesterday we kept on saying that this is the second time they are meeting at such an event. The last time it was in Embu, and I think it was just weeks after his impeachment. And even the former president, retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, was at the same event. That time, Gachagua was not given the microphone. He did not get a chance to speak. It was at a church event. This time round, he was given. Wacha tu. All Kalou onslaught, they call it on the front page of the People Daily. Now, wamepiga picha moja wanaonyesha just the distance and how many people sat between the president and the former deputy president. Interestingly, one of the people who tried to invite the former deputy president to address the congregation was the MP for Kinangop. I forget his name. Alijaribu ku-invite Rigathi Gachagua. Former deputy president said no. Hujatosha mboga, utoshi mboga kuni-invite. If it's not the governor of Nyandarua, I'm not even stepping up. And you know what? The thing is, according to the State House program, the former deputy president had not been scheduled to speak. So it was up to the MC of the day to decide whether to fit him in the program. But when the MP for Kinangop tried to do so, it backfired on him a good one. Yes? Oh, yeah. Until the governor of Nyandarua, Badilisha, had to come. That's the only time that Rigathi Gachagua accepted to rise up to his feet and walk to the podium. So that's a big story on the front page of the People Daily. The only other highlights: pale chini bursary funds row as Gathongo calls out NGCDF board. Gathongo is also a member of Parliament. No, Gathongo is the controller of budget. Or
Nancy Gathongo?
Auditor General.
Auditor General.
Auditor General. Pale juu, are Kenyan leaders embracing the politics of tokenism? I think they're definitely doing it. So that's the People Daily, and you'll realize that this story, the main one, fireworks at a funeral, is the main theme across most of the papers today.
Right. Nipe nikupe, Taifa Leo, ana kwa ana. Kwa mara ya kwanza tangu Ruto na Gachagua wageuke mahasimu, wawili hao walikabiliana ana kwa ana katika mazishi ya mbunge wa zamani wa Kalou David Kariao, ambapo walitupiana cheche kali za maneno. Majibizano makali ya zuka baina ya Rais Ruto na aliyekuwa naibu wake Gachagua katika mazishi Nyandarua. You know, some would say that hakukuwa na actually majibizano makali.
Kulikuwa nayo.
Wengine wanasema Rigathi Gachagua alikuwa na play good cards.
You see, we call it majibizano sababu whatever issues Rigathi Gachagua raised, the president decided to respond to some of them.
Yeah.
So it was nipe nikupe. Ukileta na mimi najibu. Especially when the president said, mimi hakuna mtu mimi atuitishi ruhusa kugusa. Alisema mimi sitaki ruhusa. I'm not looking for permission to go anywhere in this country. I'm the president.
Yes. But, you know, giving to the fact that, you know, we've seen worse before this time. You know, hizo maneno za, wewe unajua uko na masikio kubwa, hata unafaa uende gym tubako inararua shati. You know, if you're talking about majibizano makali, would expect that it was at that level. But he was addressing concerns that are actually concerns that should be addressed, like the issues of alcohol in the area, issues of the PCEA charge, you know, and asema mama wamemtuma pale. I think President was just right to respond to them at that time, because the issues also raised at that time, because alikuwa anasema anatumiwa nini messages by those people. So anyway, if majibizano makali, it's just how you look at it. It's all about perspective. Yes.
Even the president at some point had to apologize and say, najua hapa ni mazishi, but nimepita line kidogo monisame. Because he felt, yes, but I needed to respond to that. You can't ignore. Unarushiwa ngumi tu hapo alafu kuja unyamaze useme ati hata mimi ni mzuri.
It's not how it works. Anyway, it was an interesting show yesterday to watch. This story is on page 2, nipe nikupe. Other quick headlines here: mpango wa kudhibiti vyuo vya dini ni habari nyingine. Osotsi apigwa Kisumu. This is another big story here. Seneta aliulizwa mbona wanapinga serikali jumuishi ilhali yeye ni kiongozi wa ODM. Yeye si kiongozi wa ODM, si alishatolewa.
Walimtoa kama deputy party leader Lakini it looks like there are people who still have a lot of bitterness from the fact that there's rebellion within the party. Yeah. But it brings to the 4 issues about Gunism, which was one of the issues raised by Rigathi Gachagua at the funeral. That now, as a politician, as long as you oppose someone, of which you will definitely oppose someone, as a politician, you have a rival, a political rival, that you're no longer safe walking around the streets of various cities and rural areas in the country. Utakutana tu na mtu na watakuja wakuzabe mangumi na makofi, which is very sad. It's really sad. Yeah, it's really sad.
That scenario ya Osotsi was so ugly.
Okay, what has Godfrey Osotsi done? What have you ever seen him do to deserve such a beating?
Very calm man, ana mambo mingi. Asumbui mtu. Hatuwezi jua anyway.
Sasa kama huyo atapigwa na wengine, the most vocal ones, what will happen to them?
But wachana tana, you remember Charles Ongondo Were? Ongondo, you know, a lot of people came to hear about Ongondo Were after he was killed. Like watu kama hao wenye hawana mambo mingi. It's always those ones. Lakini ndio ujue propaganda, watu wanasukuma agenda huko. Ukifungua sahi Twitter, you will see a different agenda.
I saw that, and it's very unfortunate. Okay, even if you did that and there's no proof because there's no video proof, why would he deserve that kind of beating? Anyway, the DCI says they're investigating that incident.
All right, on the top strip, Trump ainua mikono ajapo kwa ujanja. That story about Iran, vita dhidi ya Iran vya sita kwa wiki 2, huku uamuzi ikitarajiwa kufunguliwa. Now this newspaper is reporting that it has been opened. Others are reporting, international outlets are reporting that it has been closed again, and that's Taifa Leo.
All right. Daily Nation, same story. Face off. Kalou MP David Keraho's death sets up a by-election showdown for opposing factions. They said they should not talk about the by-election, but definitely they did. So President Ruto and his former deputy Rigathi Gachagua yesterday shared a platform for the second time since the latter's impeachment in 2024. But this time the allies turned foes, traded sharp barbs during a requiem mass in Kalou in Nyandarua County, escalating their bitter fight for the political soul of Mount Kenya. The story is covered on pages 4 and 5. And something else that came up is it's almost 2 years since the impeachment of the former deputy president. But you can also tell the level of bitterness that Rigathi Gachagua still harbors. He talked about his impeachment. Surely. By now, we should have moved on. He really talked about his impeachment and how he was hounded out of office. I think he's never gotten a chance to tell President Ruto to his face how he felt about the impeachment. Alimwambia uliniondoa kwa ofisi. Hata uliniondoa kwa ofisi.
Angeongelelea tena bado ungekuja umesema, lakini hajawahi kuongelelea.
No, you should have some things you move on. But anyway, if it is a political fodder, why not? So that's a story on the front page, Face Off. It's covered on a spread, pages 4 and 5 of this paper. A story about Senator Osotsi and the assault in Kisumu also features prominently on the front page of this paper. Wanasema outrage after goons assault Senator Osotsi. And people are feeling this was really unnecessary. To what end? Would you attack Godfrey Osotsi? To what end? There are people who are much louder, much more mouthy, wakiongea watakukasirisha. Unaweza sema huyu akiongea anaweza nikasirisha nirushe mkono. But Godfrey Osotsi, surely. Anyway, that story we were discussing earlier, why courts cannot force you to remain in marriage, is there on the front page of the Daily Nation. The main story is on page 3. The High Court has ruled that couples in broken marriages should be allowed to divorce, warning forced unions cause emotional and social harm. We do agree with that story. Stories on page 3. You can read more about that. Usikue tu unakaa mahali alafu unasema, oh, I am married but I'm suffering.
Unasema we do agree with that. So we do. We do.
We do agree. We do agree that two people who have made a decision to stay together should not be forced to stay together against their will. Once they decide we no longer want to stay together, and then kila mtu kwao. Kwani nani hana kwao?
Holiday kila mtu aende kwao.
Watu wakifunga shule hata kama ni half term, enda kwenu. World news, Strait of Hormuz reopens after US-Iran ceasefire. And you see, most of the papers, you'll realize because the situation in the Middle East is very fluid, as we discussed. So yesterday, the main discussion was about the ceasefire, the 2-week postponement of Donald Trump's threat to annihilate Iran and an entire generation. But then, a lot changed during the day. Israel continued its bombardment despite the ceasefire, and that has changed the situation somewhat. We'll continue observing that. Fuel shortage spreads across the country now. Kimeanza kuumana. Yesterday, it's only Tanzania who were complaining about the hike in fuel prices. Uganda, hata wajaongea hiyo story. Fuel shortage spreads across the country. Petrol stations across the country are reporting stockouts amid claims of hoarding. Even as new details emerge on the fuel scandal, most of them are hoarding, anticipating the 14th of this month, when the next review by EPRA is anticipated. That will be next week.
This is watoe mafuta.
Ndio watoe mafuta. Anasema si kama if we can gain 10, 14, 15 shillings per litre next week. Sahi hatuuzi. That's a Daily Nation today.
The Standard pulling no punches, same story. Former Deputy President Gachagua had bided his time, and when the moment came, he seized it with both hands. Now he turned a national program into his own stage, tearing into President William Ruto and his allies with the voraciousness of a wounded tiger. He set the pace, lobbing epithets at Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah, the National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula, and his replacement Kithure Kindiki, his replacement. Hey, the Standard. Each of them listened and comfortably, grinning and fidgeting. As if that were not enough, Gachagua introduced his team, even singing as though he had all the time in the world. By the end of the solemn event, it was clear to the captivated crowd who held the ground, President Ruto himself, a master of comebacks, fell back on calls for decorum, but the damage had already been done. Regarding Gachagua, if he wanted to bring down that hole, he would have. I feel like he was too nice.
But he really took his time. Do you realize he really took his time? Like at some point, the governor of Nyandarua, who was the one who invited him to stage, I think rose up trying to show him, to indicate to him, okay, fine, you can wrap up. We aliambiwa, hapa mfalme ni mmoja. Can you sit down?
Yes.
Can you sit down? The king is one here. You see that declaration of him as king.
Mimi kama kiongozi.
Mimi kama kiongozi. Alisema mfalme ni mmoja. Yeah. We had said earlier about how the MP for Kinangop had tried to invite him.
Yeah.
And then the guy, the Gachagua, said, hujatosha mboga kuni-invite hapo.
Na akaongea even after the Speaker of the National Assembly.
Yes. Hata speaker alipata strays. Aliambiwa wewe unakubalia watu wazungumzie mimi when I'm not in the house.
I think I saw a point somewhere that hanging out with rejected what? Was it rejected villages or where did I saw something like that somewhere. I will look into it later and come back to it. That's the main story covered on the front page of the Standard this morning. On the back page, Matters Sports. Why Raya is world's best goalkeeper? Right.
But you feel that they're overplaying that story of Raya being the best goalkeeper. Okay. But then again, the last two games where Arsenal have lost, Raya was not in, between the goalposts.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's true.
He's the best.
Just be the best.
Yes. And then is Arsenal. We don't encourage Arsenal banter on the show. So if Arsenal is being talked nicely about, then we support.
We definitely do.
Yes.
There's a story on page 3 of the Standard. Woman sues hospital for fetus video shared on social media. You see the way they take your scans and do these things. Then the hospitals shared the same on social media. Now they're being taken to court.
Yes. Why would you do that? Why would you share that?
Hata kama ni biashara yako, mambo hiyo haifai.
That's the Standard.
All right. From the Standard, let's take a look at the Star, which steers clear of what... Okay, not really steers clear. They have that story, Pale Juu, traded Babs, Ruto, Gachagua tear at each other in battle for Mount Kenya. But that story is hidden deep in page 6 of the Star. The main story, of course, about the fuel. Inside the fuel saga, how Kebs Wandai emerged unscathed. Documents show CS was, to a large extent, excluded from decision-making. There are many people who may disagree with this headline. I don't know how you can exclude a CS from decision-making on importation of 60,000 metric tons. Something that should even be discussed at the National Security Council level.
Yeah.
So how was a CS really excluded? Yeah. The Star, anyway, you can read that story on pages 4 and 5. Ex-Cabinet Secretary Tuju denies charges in false information case. He was in court yesterday na anakaa amejifunga kitu hapa tumboni. There's a picture there. The last time we seen him, he was in hospital. Finally, he was arraigned. But ni kama hawajui exactly what to charge him with. Yeah. And Kenya, another global south country, seek fair share in new pandemic agreement. Now we're planning for pandemics. Yeah. All right. Hey, okay. That's the Star this morning. Fresh, independent, different. On the back page, Giants on high alert, matters local football. You can grab yourself a copy of the Star.
The Star, all right.
60 bob in Kenya.
Karibu niseme today is Tuesday. Okay.
Tuesday
inakwanga free. Yeah. Business Daily, Rakaraka Kenya Railways and KPL locked in 6 billion shillings SGR loan breach row. They say that KRA and KRC are locked in a dispute over the transfers of that amount to an escrow account for the repayment of a Chinese loan used to build the Mombasa to Nairobi Standard Gauge Railway, that is SGR. Now, according to Editor General Nancy Gathungu, the failure of KPA to deposit about 5.95 billion shillings escrow account is a breach of the terms of the SGR loan between Kenya and China that was signed in 2014, exposing taxpayers to penalties. That's the story on page 2. Fate of recalled 12 billion shillings controversial petrol unknown. It's another story on page 2 as well. And on the Thika, road contractors relief in fresh 20 billion debt repayment. Jambojet to launch Entebbe Dar flights as it acquire new planes. And CBK maintains base rate at 8.75% in April review. That's the Business Daily.
All right. In Uganda, let's cross over to Uganda wanazungumzia nini? Politics about the speaker's position. Unajua ile Anita Among.
Yes.
Huwa inaleta joto sana. So Museveni shakes up speaker race. The president says the National Resistance Movement Central Executive Committee will reconsider its previous decision on the matter and possibly vet all candidates seeking to become Speaker of Parliament. So Anita Among is no longer guaranteed. She's just among the many who want that position. The other story given prominence, and you realize they're not talking about fuel.
Yes.
Even now in Uganda. There's a former cabinet minister, former state minister, Karamoja Affairs, Agnes Nandutu. She's there on the front page, lonely and all by herself before the anti-corruption court in Kampala. Yes, she was convicted for diverting 200 iron sheets meant for vulnerable communities in Karamoja. It is now the big story on the front page of the New Vision. Wanasema pale, mabati case, Nandutu convicted. Unaiba hadi mabati na wewe cabinet secretary. The judge to sentence ex-minister tomorrow. So that is the main story there on the New Vision. But the other story, Museveni speaks out on speakership race. Amesema, kila mtu, Anita among the others will just be vetted, all of them. That is in Uganda. You go to Tanzania, mafuta ndio bado mjadala.
So ulisema wako na reserves Kenya? Jana. Si wewe ulisema jana?
Uganda. Na walitunyima. Ndio maana wako na mafuta.
Sasa mbona wako na stress na wanajua wako na mkitumia
shida ya mafuta ni Kenya na Tanzania.
Mkitumia yao mnajua mtawatolea wapi mafuta.
Habari kuu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa gazeti la Mwananchi wanasema mjadala wa mafuta wa kolea, wasafirishaji waongeza shinikizo nauli ipande. At least they are saying, the transporters are insisting, tunataka kuongeza nauli. Ingekuwa ni Kenya wangeongeza hata uitishi ruhusa kugusa. Wadau wataka serikali ipunguze tozo, igeukie gesi. Rais Samia apunguza ukubwa misafara yake kubana matumizi. So the president has decided to reduce her entourage. I saw her entourage had like 45 cars at one point. Mafuta sasa imeisha. All right. It's the same story on the front page of The Citizen. Fuel debate rages as global supply shocks hit Tanzania. Uganda wako sawa. Wako na mafuta reserves hapa Kenya na wametunyima na wako sawa. They're not talking about that. Fuel prices continue to dominate national discourse in Tanzania, even as global oil markets showed early signs of easing yesterday following the announcement of a 2-week ceasefire in the US-Israeli war on Iran. That situation we're still monitoring. Israel hawataki maneno ya ceasefire. So Tanzania shida ni fuel. Kenya shida ni watu wakupiga kelele kwa mazishi. Uganda shida ni speakers race. Nita Among. All right. Those are the dailies from the region. Let's take a look at the cartoons now. And we start off with the cartoon on the People Daily. Kuna pump ya fuel prices pale na kuna mtu amewekwa ndani ya mafuta akatolewa hivi anatiririka mafuta pof pof.